All right, this is the next episode of the True Wrestling Fan Discussions. Continue our Clash of the Champions review series. This is going to be WCW Clash of the Champions 19. I'm your host, Mike.
I'm Frank. Let's get into it. This was on June 16th, 1992, but they aired it on the 22nd of June, 1992.
Summer.
This whole card was the first round of the NWA Tag Team Title Tournament. The rest of the tournament would commence at the Great American Bash.
I want to say something about this, man. We both love tournaments,
Oh yeah,
but my thing is if you're going to do a tournament, you do it in one night.
yeah. You got to do the whole thing together.
You got to do the whole thing
I don't.
together.
I don't like when it gets
Just,
broken up.
it takes away from it. It doesn't, it takes away from it being impactful and it being something that you have to tune into. You
Hmm.
have to watch this because then you split it up. It's like, I feel like there's no momentum, but
No, and this one really drew. This was rough. This was a 2.8 on TBS that they
oh,
drew
Jesus.
at a time where they've built up their roster and they've kind of gotten it over the fact that there's no more Ric Flair, no more Lex Luger, and
Yeah,
so
no more Sid.
yep, no more Sid, and yet they're drawing this low. I mean, maybe because it was the fact that it was the NWA Tag Team Title Tournament. I don't know. But you had Jim Ross and Jesse the Body Ventura doing the commentary here. And of course, you had Tony Schiavone and Magnum TA hosting the event,
Mhm.
as well as Missy Hyatt, who would have a important announcement later on in the evening regarding the NWA. During this tournament, over the top rope disqualification rule was gone. It didn't exist here. This is NWA rules.
Yeah, that was the thing that this guy brought back. He brought back
Cowboy Bill Watts.
yeah, he brought back that NWA like it was because it was kind of like NWA kind of like faded, right? For a while in WCW. Like they weren't
Yeah,
mentioning like NWA and now they're recognizing it. But it won't be for long because we all know what happens.
and Jesse was overselling the no mats around ringside,
Yeah, yeah.
and he even said, I hate to constantly mention it, well, but you're going to do it anyway.
He's probably because he was probably told to mention it. That's what it was.
Yeah, mention that there's no mats. We're tough guys. We can handle it. Whatever. But of course, Cowboy Bill Watts was interviewed by both Shivani and Magnum TA before the event. So, and let's go ahead and kick off the opening round. The first match of the tournament was Ricky the Dragon. And by the way, the tag teams were almost like sporadic, so it felt like these guys were just thrown together,
Yeah.
and they weren't actual tag teams. At least not some of the ones that were victorious and whatnot. You had Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Nikita Koloff against Joe and Dean Malenko, and most of the time during this night, the crowd was silent. There was not much out of them during the Brian Pillman Jushin Thunder Liger tag team
That's how
match.
I was. That's how I was watching this.
It was during their match. They got lively because of the aerial moves and
Well, yeah,
whatnot.
just
But
because
for the
the high
most
spots.
part,
No.
Charleston, South Carolina sounded like they were asleep.
Yeah, they were back at the Citadel. They had done another clash we had
Hmm.
reviewed.
And a lot of these teams were brought in for the tournament. So and even Jim Ross said, there's not a whole lot we know about these guys. Well, if you're not informative about the tag team you're bringing in, then how do you expect the fan base to get behind you when even you're saying I don't know anything about these guys? So that I thought was a little peculiar. Maybe they should have had Mike Tenay at this point, give you some background on some of these guys. This match itself, this opening match, it wasn't a whole lot of excitement. And of course, we know Dean Malenko, eventually will be wrestling in WCW. You had him in this tournament. You also had Chris Benoit in this tournament, but not really recognized yet at this point, at least not in WCW. During this match, I mean, Koloff hits the sickle on Dean Malenko and
Yeah,
gets the pin,
the
and Steamboat
Malenkos.
and Koloff
I
are
didn't.
eliminated the Malenkos, and Steamboat and Koloff are not even a tag team.
They're not even a tag team.
Moving on to the next match, which was a little bit more entertaining because it was four WCW athletes. You had Marcus Alexander Bagwell and Z-Man taking on the United States champion Ravishing Rick Rude and the television champion Stunning Steve Austin from the Dangerous Alliance. This match was a little bit more interesting to watch because of these individuals, mainly also Rude and Austin. I did like this match, and of course, they didn't waste any time. It was a very short match because they had a bunch of first round matches to get through. Ravishing Rick Rude hits the Rude Awakening on Marcus Bagwell, and he got the pin. So Austin and Rude have moved on to the second round of the tournament. So we did get all the first round matches tonight, and they wind up adding a round two matchup, mainly because of a forfeiture. I'll get to that in a little bit. So following the second tag team match in the tournament, Eric Bischoff interviewed Dr. Death Steve Williams and Terry Bam Bam Gordy. They were pretty much calling out the Steiners in the bracket. If they were successful in their tag match, and if the Steiners were successful in theirs, they would meet in the second round of the tournament. So next match on the card, speaking of which, we had Terry Bam Bam Gordy and Dr. Death Steve Williams taking on Larry and Jeff O'Day.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
One looked like he never hit his prime. The other one looked like he hit his prime 30 years ago.
Yeah, I wonder who's going to win this one.
Yeah, seriously. Especially when you've got Gordy and Williams calling out the Steiners, so we're heading towards that. And of course, it didn't take long before Williams hit an Oklahoma Stampede on Larry O'Day and got the pin.
There you go.
So Gordy and Williams have moved on to the second round of the tournament.
Could you imagine if they would have done something like this in WWF during the golden era when there was Demolition, Strike Force, Rougeau Brothers, Hart Foundation?
Oh, doing an Ultimate Tag Team tournament?
Could you imagine?
Oh, I'd be in my glory. It would have been the best pay-per-view to me of all time.
Yeah.
It's a shame they didn't do more tournaments. I know.
I just thought of that. Like, yeah.
Because you can a whole bunch of what ifs with that. The dream matchups. They had plenty of tag teams to do a 16-team tournament.
Yeah, the Bulldogs. I mean, hell, you could even have the Young Stallions, right?
Young Stallions,
Young Stallions. You throw them in there, man.
The Islanders, yeah. It would have been awesome.
Yeah. Just thought I'd mention that.
Thanks. I'm gonna be thinking about it all night now. Following that match, Jesse Ventura interviewed the World Heavyweight Champion Sting. So, and then our next match on the card was, in fact, Barry Windham and Dusty Rhodes teaming up, and these guys were actually, you could say they were a formidable tag team because they had teamed up multiple times, former tag team champions, against Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton of the Dangerous Alliance. And it's funny that Windham once again will get his hands on the Dangerous Alliance, considering the storyline going on with him. And so Paulie naturally gets involved, hitting Rhodes in the kidney area with his foam. It really got interesting when Bobby Eaton missed the leg drop for the top rope on Rhodes. Rhodes then with a running bulldog and got the pin on Bobby Eaton. So Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes have moved on in this tournament. And of course, it was, in fact, during this match that they started mentioning about a tag team getting assaulted, allegedly. The Steiner brothers were actually supposed to meet Miguel Perez Jr. and Ricky Santana, the Puerto Rican team. But the Steiners moved on by forfeit because they had announced Bischoff had interviewed Williams and Gordy, and they were talking about how the Puerto Rican team were allegedly assaulted, something about a car, and they forfeited against the Steiner brothers, even though there was no video whatsoever.
This is like years before the NWO ran the Steiners off the road. Remember that? The Steiner brothers, they ran off the road.
I love that segment.
That was crazy, man. That's crazy.
That kid, they're hitting each other with the car, and then he flips over, and Scott's like, "Yo, we gotta go."
Yeah, we gotta go. Yeah, that was hilarious.
I love that segment. But yeah, there was no video footage whatsoever of this, and Gordy and Williams have mentioned the Steiners would not have an opponent. Now, right before that, Missy Hyatt had announced that the NWA tournament would start August 6th, and the finals would be August 10th through the 12th in Japan. This for the I think it was for the NWA title. Such WCW superstars like Ravishing Rick Rude, Arn Anderson, Stunning Steve Austin, and Bobby Eaton are going to be in the tournament. So now that the Steiner brothers have moved on with no first round opponent, let's get into the action in the ring, where you had the United States Tag Team Champion, the Fabulous Freebirds, taking on the Silver Kings. Again, Ross and Ventura do not know anything about most of these tag teams, which is why I'm looking at this going, then why are we doing this? I mean, and then you expect the fans to get behind a tag team they know nothing about or have never seen. And of course, you see a team like the Silver Kings taking on the Fabulous Freebirds. Gee, who's going to win?
We try to figure it out, man.
And of course, Hayes with an inside cradle and a pin. That's how that one ended. And now before this, on the outside, Michael Hayes had accidentally hit Jimmy Garvin in the face with that punch of his. Luckily, nothing transpired, as far as the Freebirds at each other's throat. Garvin saw it as a pure accident, and the Freebirds were able to get their stuff together and get the hard-fought victory against the Silver Kings. So, following that match, Tony and Magnum had announced that the Puerto Rican team are, in effect, hurt. And Ole Anderson announced that the Steiner brothers had received a first-round bye and would be going on to the second round to meet. They would be meeting Gordy and Williams.
Which the Steiners. Once you heard they were in this, they were going. They had to be in. They had to be in the main event of this card. There's no way that they're not gonna.
Exactly, or the main event of the tournament for that fact. One or the other. But for this evening,
but at least,
yes, they had to be. So the NWA is trying to figure out something. They would let us know later on in the card. The next match on the card is actually one. This is the first round match I enjoyed the most because of the high flying action. And these guys are former rivals, now turned tag team. It was Jushin Thunder Liger and Flying Brian Pillman versus Chris Benoit and Beef Wellington.
Chris Benoit. Like
Beef
Jericho would
Wellington.
Say.
Wow. Yeah, Chris Benoit. And now, of course, Brian Pillman in singles competition wants his rematch with Scotty Flamingo for the light heavyweight title. These guys are former adversaries, but they are teaming together. And this was a very, very interesting match, high flying. The crowd finally woke up during this match, and for good reason. I did enjoy that Pillman and Benoit get in the ring together, and I'm thinking, okay, 3 more years, boys, and you're going to be 4 horsemen. We'll never see you out pretty much together in the 4 horsemen, but you'll be part of them at the same time. And Benoit did look pretty impressive here. I'm surprised he didn't stay in WCW at this time, but they at least got a good look at him, and then later on were able to bring him back full time. But during this match, Liger barely was able to body slam Wellington. I mean, the guy is giving up 70 pounds to Liger. And then, of course, he hits his top rope moonsault against the pin, and Pillman and Liger have moved on to the second round. So next match on the card would be the Headhunters, the Dominican team, versus Akira Nagami and Hiroshi Hase from Japan. And, of course, Jim Ross going to Ventura, he goes, I guess they thought our TVs were still in black and white because they're dressed in black and white. And again, there's nothing about these guys that they know other than Headhunter 1, Headhunter 2. And now, Hase, we know from New Japan, been involved in storylines with the Steiner brothers in regards to the IWGP Tag Team titles over there. This match wasn't bad. I liked it because the Japanese team gave you a certain style. Nagami and Hase at the same time had simultaneous German suplex pins on the Headhunters. Referee just counted 3. And Nagami and Hase have moved on to the next round, and they would be facing at the Great American Bash the Fabulous Freebirds. That is going to be a very impressive matchup. So next up was Jesse the Body Ventura was interviewing Ron Simmons. During the interview, Harley Race and Super Invader, oh Lord, came down. And after some pretty distasteful comments from Harley Race, Ron Simmons had enough, attacked Harley Race. The 2 of them were beating Simmons down until Simmons got the upper hand, and he football chop blocked Harley Race and took out Super Invader. So his momentum going into 1992 is getting big. And his ultimate goal is to be the first African-American world heavyweight champion in WCW.
And he will be.
Yes, he will. And then, of course, following that, Tony Schiavone once again interviewed Bill Watts. Watts had announced that the second round match between the Steiner brothers and Gordy and Williams would actually commence tonight. This after all the lawyers and everybody, blah blah blah. Our main event would be the Steiners versus them, and the crowd went nuts when Bill Watts had announced that. Well, speaking of that, let's get to it. The NWA Tag Team Tournament title tournament, the second round matchup, quarterfinals, if you may. The Steiner brothers versus Terry Bam Bam Gordy and Dr. Death Steve Williams. Remember, Rick Steiner and Steve Williams were once part of the Varsity Club, so they knew each other very well. This was a pretty good match. This was a knockdown, drag out affair.
It was fun, even though I never liked Dr. Death. I've said that on many episodes.
Never was a fan. Never was a fan of Gordy either, really.
Yeah, but this was a good match. Maybe it's because of the Steiners. It could be because of the Steiners.
Of course, yeah. The Steiners will bring the best out of anybody, and the best out of a bad match as well. Now everybody is hoping, or they're like, okay, the Steiner brothers, they got this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so, people. While the ref was distracted with Rick Steiner, Scotty Steiner was going for a belly-to-belly suplex on Dr. Death Steve Williams. Gordy clipped Scott's injured, just recently repaired knee, and Williams fell on him, and the referee counted to 3, and Gordy and Williams have moved on
in an upset
to the semifinals in an upset against the Steiner brothers.
The number 1
seed. Yes, and the Scott Steiner had to be helped out of the ring.
Damn it.
So we're hoping that there's no damage again to that. Scott Steiner was out. I know it was a storyline.
The storyline was.
I'm still going with it.
Yeah.
But Gordy and Williams won this battle here, and they moved on to the semifinals.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as doing this on a Clash, I thought they could have done this whole tournament at the Bash.
Might as well
just do it all in one night.
Well, yeah.
And because some people, they're going to be able to see this Clash obviously on TBS, but not necessarily get the pay-per-view.
Right.
And then they're going to wonder, well, who won it?
I mean, they've done this before, splitting up the tournaments. I just don't like it.
I'm not a fan of it. No, do it all in one event.
You could see why the rating was low too, man. It just
2.8 was one of the worst ones they've had.
Yeah, I just didn't.
I didn't care for it. No, I didn't work for me, brother.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's our review. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. See you guys soon.
Take care.